Boot, snarled Gunnery Sergeant Hayes, his voice a rusty chainsaw gnawing through the humid North Carolina air. You call that a push-up? You're embarrassing yourself. And me. I gritted my teeth, sweat stinging my eyes as I lowered myself to the unforgiving sand once more. Every muscle in my body screamed for mercy, but Hayes was relentless. He was a legend in the Marine Corps, a grizzled veteran with more deployments than I had birthdays. To him, we recruits were nothing but lumps of clay, waiting to be molded into warriors. One more set, Hayes bellowed, and the rest of my platoon groaned in unison. After what felt like an eternity, we were finally released for the night. My body ached like it had been run over by a tank, but my mind was surprisingly clear. Despite the grueling training, I felt a strange sense of exhilaration. This was what I had signed up for, after all. The challenge. The brotherhood. The chance to become a United States Marine. As I lay in my bunk, staring up at the flimsy canvas roof, I couldn't help but wonder what the next day would bring. There was a rumor circulating that we were in for a special kind of training, something that would push us to our limits and beyond. I wasn't sure if I was excited or terrified. The next morning, we were roused before dawn and herded onto a fleet of buses. We drove for hours, the landscape changing from flat farmland to dense forest. Finally, we pulled up to a sprawling military base, its razor-wire fences and guard towers casting long shadows in the early morning light. We were ushered into a briefing room, where a stern-looking officer in full-dress uniform stood waiting for us. He introduced himself as Colonel Anderson, and without preamble, he dropped a bombshell. Marines, he began, his voice booming through the room. You have been selected for a top-secret training program. This program is not for the faint of heart. It will test you physically, mentally, and emotionally. Some of you may not make it through. But those who do will emerge as the finest warriors this planet has ever seen. He paused, letting his words sink in. A nervous murmur rippled through the room. You will be trained by the best of the best, Anderson continued. Specialists from every branch of the military. Experts in hand-to-hand combat, survival skills, weapons tactics, and more. You will learn to operate in any environment, from the frozen tundra to the scorching desert. You will become masters of stealth, infiltration, and sabotage. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. The moment we had all been waiting for. But there's one more thing, Anderson said, and his voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. You won't be training alone. He pressed a button on a remote control, and a screen behind him flickered to life. It showed grainy footage of alien soldiers, their faces hidden behind helmets, their bodies clad in sleek armor. Our intelligence suggests that these aliens are preparing for war, Anderson said. And we need to be ready. That's why we've invited a select group of their soldiers to train alongside you. To learn from each other. To prepare for the battles to come. The room erupted in a cacophony of gasps and whispers. Alien soldiers? Training with us? It sounded like something out of a science fiction movie. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Anderson said, raising his voice above the din. To learn from a different species. To understand their strengths and weaknesses. To forge an alliance that could save our planet. He paused, scanning the room with his hawk-like eyes. Are you up for the challenge, Marines? He asked. A deafening roar answered him. The following day, a sleek spacecraft descended from the clouds, casting an otherworldly shadow over the base. From it emerged a delegation of alien soldiers, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some were humanoid, with familiar limbs and torsos, yet their skin shimmered with iridescent scales or bore strange markings. Others were more exotic, their bodies composed of segmented plates, writhing tentacles, or shimmering energy fields. They moved with a grace and confidence that belied their otherworldly origins, their eyes scanning us with an unreadable intensity. A hush fell over the assembled Marines as we tried to gauge their intentions. Were they friend or foe? Ally or adversary? The alien commander, a towering figure with a voice like the rumble of distant thunder, addressed us in a language that was both alien and strangely familiar. A universal translator implanted in our ears rendered his words into English, but the nuances of his tone and the subtleties of his body language were lost in translation. Greetings, Terrans, he boomed, his voice echoing across the parade ground. We are the Krill, a warrior race from a distant galaxy. We have come to test your mettle, to see if you are worthy of standing beside us in the battles to come. His words sent a shiver down my spine. There was an arrogance in his tone, a thinly veiled contempt for our species. It was clear that the Krill considered themselves superior to us in every way. The training began in earnest the following day, and it was immediately apparent that the Krill were not here to play games. They pushed us to our limits and beyond, demanding a level of physical and mental exertion that we had never before experienced. They subjected us to grueling obstacle courses that tested our agility and endurance, sparring matches that left us bruised and battered, and simulations that forced us to make split-second decisions under extreme pressure. But the Krill were not just physically demanding. They were also masters of psychological warfare. They used their advanced technology to create illusions that played on our deepest fears and insecurities, forcing us to confront our own mortality and question our place in the universe. Despite the intensity of the training, I found myself drawn to the Krill. Their alienness was both terrifying and exhilarating, and I couldn't help but be fascinated by their culture and their way of life. I spent hours observing them, trying to decipher their customs and their motivations. One evening, I was approached by a Krill soldier named Za. He was one of the more humanoid aliens, with a lean, muscular build and skin the color of polished obsidian. His eyes, however, were unlike anything I had ever seen. They were pools of liquid silver, reflecting the light in a mesmerizing way. "You are a curious one, Terran," he said, his voice a soft hiss. "I'm just trying to understand," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. "Understanding is a dangerous thing," Za said, his eyes narrowing. "It can lead to empathy. And empathy can lead to weakness." "Weakness?" I echoed. "Yes," Za said. "Weakness is the enemy of victory. It is the flaw that all Terrans share." "I don't believe that," I said, my voice rising. "We are capable of great strength and courage." Za chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "We shall see," he said, and turned away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. As the weeks turned into months, a strange camaraderie began to develop between the Marines and the Krill. We shared meals, exchanged stories, and even engaged in friendly competitions. The Krill, I discovered, were not as cold and calculating as I had initially believed. They had a rich culture, a complex code of honor, and a deep respect for those who proved themselves in battle. One night, as we sat around a campfire, a Krill soldier named Kale approached me. He was a hulking figure, with 4 arms and a carapace that shimmered like polished copper. "You have fought well, Terran," he rumbled, his voice a deep vibration that resonated in my chest. "You have earned our respect." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "But respect is not enough," Kale continued. "To truly understand us, you must experience our world." He extended one of his massive hands, palm up. In it rested a small, crystalline object that pulsed with an eerie light. "This is a memory shard," Kale explained. "It contains the collective memories of our people. Take it. See what we have seen. Feel what we have felt." I hesitated, unsure of what to expect. But curiosity got the better of me, and I reached out and took the shard. As soon as I touched it, a wave of images and sensations flooded my mind. I saw vast alien landscapes, shimmering cities, and epic battles fought across the stars. I felt the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, and the unwavering resolve of a warrior race fighting for its survival. But there was something else in the shard, something darker and more sinister. I saw the Krill's true intentions for Earth. They had no desire to forge an alliance with us. They saw humanity as a weak and divided species, ripe for conquest. They planned to use us as cannon fodder in their war against a rival alien empire, sacrificing our lives to further their own agenda. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been betrayed. We had all been betrayed. I staggered back, the memory shard slipping from my grasp. Kale watched me with an amused expression. "Now you understand," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Welcome to the real world, Terran." I stumbled away, my mind reeling. I had to warn the others. I had to expose the Krill's lies. But as I turned to run, a sharp pain lanced through my chest. I looked down to see a blade protruding from my heart. Za stood behind me, his silver eyes gleaming with malice. "Foolish Terran," he hissed. "You have seen too much." He twisted the blade and darkness closed in. As I collapsed to the ground, a kaleidoscope of emotions surged through me, rage, betrayal, and a profound sense of loss. But even as darkness crept in, a flicker of defiance remained. I refused to let the Krill have the last word. Mustering the last of my strength, I reached for my helmet, activating the emergency beacon. A faint signal pulsed out, carrying my final message: betrayal. Krill are not allies. Warn command. My vision blurred, but before I succumbed to unconsciousness, I saw a figure rush towards me. It wasn't Tsar, the would-be assassin, but Gunnery Sergeant Hayes, his face etched with fury. "Hold on, Boot," he snarled, kneeling beside me. "You're not checking out on me yet." Hayes ripped open my armor, applying a field dressing to the wound. A medic team arrived moments later, their efficient movements a blur as they stabilized me and rushed me to the base infirmary. I awoke days later, my body racked with pain, but my mind sharp and alert. Colonel Anderson stood at my bedside, his expression grim. "Your message was received, Marine," he said, his voice low and somber. "The Krill delegation has been detained. We're still trying to assess the full extent of their deception." "Sir," I croaked, my throat raw and scratchy, "they're planning to use us. To sacrifice us in their war." Anderson nodded. "We know," he said. "Thanks to you." He placed a hand on my shoulder, his grip surprisingly gentle. "You've done your country a great service, Marine," he said. "You've shown us the true face of the enemy. And you've given us a fighting chance." A wave of exhaustion washed over me, but beneath it, I felt a glimmer of pride. I had survived the Krill's treachery, and in doing so, I had saved countless lives. In the days and weeks that followed, the base was transformed into a fortress. The Marines, fueled by rage and a newfound sense of purpose, trained with a ferocity that even the Krill had not anticipated. We honed our skills, perfected our tactics, and prepared for the inevitable conflict. But we were not alone. News of the Krill's betrayal had spread throughout the galaxy, galvanizing other alien races who had also been victims of their deceit. A coalition of the willing formed, united by a common enemy and a shared desire for justice. And so the war began. Not on Earth, as the Krill had planned, but on their own territory. The combined forces of humanity and our alien allies launched a surprise attack, striking at the heart of the Krill Empire. The battles were fierce and bloody, but the Krill, caught off guard and outnumbered, were no match for our righteous fury. Their armies were routed, their ships destroyed, their leaders captured. In the end, the Krill were forced to surrender, their dreams of galactic domination shattered. Their treachery had backfired, uniting the very species they had sought to exploit. As I stood on the bridge of a captured Krill cruiser, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and wonder. We had faced the unknown, confronted our deepest fears, and emerged victorious. We had proved that humanity was not a weak and divided species, but a force to be reckoned with. And we had forged a new alliance, one that would shape the destiny of the galaxy for generations to come. The war raged across the galaxy, a maelstrom of energy weapons, advanced fighters, and colossal warships. The Krill, despite their initial arrogance, proved to be formidable adversaries. Their technology was sophisticated, their tactics cunning, and their warriors fanatically devoted to their cause. But the tide began to turn. The coalition forces, bolstered by the Marines' relentless training and the tactical insights gleaned from my near-death experience, started to gain ground. We exploited the Krill's overconfidence, turning their own strategies against them. Our human ingenuity, combined with the diverse skills and technologies of our alien allies, proved to be a potent combination. I fought alongside my fellow Marines, our bond forged in the crucible of shared hardship and the fires of vengeance. We became a well-oiled machine, each of us playing a crucial role in the symphony of destruction. One battle, in particular, stands out in my memory. We were tasked with assaulting a Krill stronghold, a heavily fortified asteroid base bristling with energy cannons and shielded by a powerful force field. The odds were stacked against us, but we charged in, our dropships weaving through a hail of enemy fire. I led my squad through the breach, our boots pounding on the metallic deck. The air was thick with the acrid stench of ozone and burning metal, the cacophony of battle a deafening roar. We fought our way through the labyrinthine corridors, our pulse rifles spitting deadly bursts of energy. The Krill fought back fiercely, their claws and mandibles flashing in the dim light. I rounded a corner and came face to face with Kale, the Krill commander who had given me the memory shard. His eyes blazed with hatred, his forearms wielding a pair of wickedly curved blades. "You," he roared, charging towards me. I raised my rifle, but he was too fast. He knocked it aside and lunged, his blades aimed at my throat. I dodged and weaved, barely avoiding his lethal strikes. We fought tooth and nail, our bodies slamming against the bulkheads, our weapons clashing in a shower of sparks. But Kale was stronger, faster, and more experienced. He disarmed me and pinned me against a wall, his blades pressed against my neck. "This is for the memory shard, Terran," he snarled. "You will pay for your treachery." I closed my eyes, accepting my fate. But then, a blinding flash of light filled the corridor. I opened my eyes to see Zar standing between me and Kale, his silver eyes glowing with an eerie intensity. "Enough," he said, his voice a chilling hiss. "This Terran is mine." He lunged at Kale, his claws extended. The two krill grappled, their bodies intertwined in a deadly dance. I seized the opportunity and scrambled to my feet, retrieving my fallen rifle. I aimed it at the struggling pair and pulled the trigger. A bolt of energy lanced through the air, striking Kale in the back. He let out a guttural cry and collapsed, his body twitching as the life drained from him. Zar turned to face me, his eyes filled with surprise and gratitude. "You have saved me from a dishonorable death," he said, his voice barely a whisper. He lowered his head in a gesture of respect, then turned and disappeared into the smoke-filled corridor. I stood there, stunned, my rifle still smoking in my hand. The battle raged around me, but for a moment, everything else faded away. I had just witnessed a krill show mercy. It was a small act, but it gave me a glimmer of hope. Perhaps not all krill were as ruthless and deceitful as their leaders. Perhaps there was still a chance for peace. But that was a question for another day. For now, the war continued. And I, along with my fellow Marines, would fight on until victory was achieved. The tide of the war had shifted, but the krill were not easily defeated. They retreated into the depths of their territory, fortifying their homeworld and surrounding systems with an intricate network of defenses. The coalition forces followed, pushing deeper into the unknown, facing new challenges and dangers at every turn. One day, a transmission intercepted from a krill scout ship sent shockwaves through the command center. It spoke of a secret weapon, a doomsday device capable of obliterating entire planets. The krill were desperate, their empire crumbling, and they were willing to unleash this ultimate weapon to ensure their survival. A sense of urgency gripped the coalition. We had to find this weapon and neutralize it before the krill could use it. But time was running out. An elite strike team was assembled, comprised of the best soldiers from each race in the coalition. I was among them, chosen for my knowledge of krill tactics and my experience fighting alongside them. We embarked on a covert mission, infiltrating a krill research facility hidden on a remote moon. Our objective: to gather intelligence on the doomsday weapon and find a way to disable it. We moved through the shadows, our footsteps muffled by the soft lunar dust. The facility was eerily silent, its dimly lit corridors filled with strange, pulsating machinery. We found a data terminal and hacked into the krill network. A wealth of information flooded our screens, revealing the true nature of the doomsday weapon. It was a massive energy cannon, powered by a captured star, capable of firing a beam of pure annihilation. But the most chilling revelation was yet to come. The weapon was not just a threat to the coalition. It was a threat to the entire galaxy. The krill had designed it to destabilize the fabric of space-time, creating a chain reaction that would rip apart the universe itself. Our mission suddenly took on a whole new level of urgency. We weren't just fighting for our own survival. We were fighting for the fate of all existence. We continued our search, following a trail of data breadcrumbs that led us deeper into the facility. We came to a massive chamber, its walls lined with glowing energy conduits. In the center of the chamber, suspended in a shimmering force field, was a device that pulsed with an ominous light. It was the control unit for the doomsday weapon. We approached cautiously, our weapons at the ready. But as we got closer, the force field intensified, crackling with energy. We were trapped. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the chamber into darkness. A voice echoed through the gloom, its tone filled with malice. "Welcome, intruders," it hissed. "I've been expecting you." A figure emerged from the shadows, its form silhouetted against the faint glow of the control unit. It was Zar, the krill soldier who had spared my life. But his eyes no longer held the spark of gratitude I had seen before. They were cold, calculating, and filled with a terrifying resolve. "You will not stop us," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "The universe will be ours." He raised his hand, and the control unit began to glow brighter, its energy surging. The doomsday weapon was activating,